dropping a little heads up to me in the chat, and then I'll just go down the line and bring each of you in to ask any questions that you may have at that point. And we'll try to move through this as orderly as we can. Just try to make sure that you're muted, obviously, if you're not asking a question, so that it's not jumping in and interrupting. With that said, oh, maybe I've got one or two more jumping in here. Sorry, guys. Perfect. Okay. With that said, we'll start with a real brief statement from Coach Janet Rayfield. From there, we'll go to Sarah Haverman, and then Coach Tamas, we'll have you do the last statement before we jump into questions. So I'll turn it over to Coach Janet Rayfield first.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. You know, I think it's certainly a challenging time for all of us, and the news to cancel the season is disappointing, I think, especially to our student athletes. I think we all understand that it couldn't have been an easy decision to make, that administrators and ADs have so many things to consider in terms of making that decision, and certainly not disappointed in them, but just disappointed in losing the opportunity to compete. I think excited about the possibility of a spring schedule. You know, can see my background, and to have a spring season with that building complete and to kick that off, that there certainly is a positive opportunity for us out of this. And so I think that's what we're trying to hang our cleats on right now, is that, you know, we still can stick through this together. You know, our strength coach and myself have looked at it and said, well, we can throw out our 25 years experience of what the rhythm of a season looks like, because we just changed it to something it's never been. So it's an opportunity for us to grow and challenge ourselves in our creative thinking. And I think an opportunity for our athletes to really invest in their development right now. And so those are the kind of the things that we're focused on right now. Not the fact that we've lost a season, but what have we gained from that? What opportunities can we take out of it? And I think that's what we're trying to focus on right now.
Janet, thank you. Sarah, Coach Haverman, if you're ready, I'll have you jump in with your statement now.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Certainly, we would prefer if we were doing this and we were focused on highlighting our upcoming fall season. The uniqueness for my team is that they've now experienced this twice. So we lost our outdoor track season last March, and then they arrived on campus for their initial testing on Monday and found out on Tuesday that their fall season was canceled. So it's been heartbreaking, to say the least, but in our program we focus a lot on what kind of legacy we leave behind. So one thing we've really been talking about is the legacy of 2020, and that'll certainly be summed up for future teams of a legacy of faith and belief and sacrifice, and our fall is seeming that that'll be the same type of situation. So with being coaching distance athletes, we usually go right from cross-country season to indoor season to outdoor season. So this will be a rare opportunity for us to really go through with a fine-tooth comb in the development of each of our individual student athletes. So again, like Coach Rayfield said, this is an opportunity for us. We refuse to spend a lot of time on the downsides. We're going to focus on the upsides of this. Unfortunately, in athletics, you tend to know that setbacks and problems are expected, but you always find that they're not permanent. So while it's heartbreaking and we've now had 2 seasons that were impeded, our attitudes and our actions are not impeded. So for right now, we're waking up grateful that they're back in Champaign, even though they're still quarantined in a hotel. But testing has gone smoothly. So we are grateful for on Saturday, if everything goes to plan, we are having our first practice together. So once again, we want to compete, but we're going to focus on the opportunity this presents us in their development. And when the lights come back on, we'll be ready to roll.
Coach Haverman, thank you. Coach Tamas, I'll turn it over to you now.
Ditto. Combine those 2 quotes, and that's me. No. I echo those sentiments. Obviously, a tough day. You know, these kids, young women, all the athletes pour their heart and soul into this, and for a lot of them, it's all they've known. It's what they've grown up with. It's what they came here to do, along with getting an excellent education. So, you know, we had prepped for the fact that it could happen. Doesn't make the day any easier, but I think overall they understand the bigger picture of this, and we talked about that since day one. And you know, Coach Sarah, you know, talking about we already had teams that lost seasons last year, didn't even have a chance to have a spring. So we're very well aware of that, and that we're still thankful that we have the opportunity to potentially have a spring season, however that may look. But I know my team's mentality is, you know, we're competitors, and you know, we took yesterday off, but had practice this morning, and great practice this morning, and they came in just as fire as ever. And we know, you know, we take it one day at a time, and that's what we've always done, and that's what we'll continue to do. And even though we don't get the outcome that we want, we still get a chance to improve as a team, both on and off the court. And we're excited with that opportunity and everything that Illinois has done every step of the way to help us try to do that. And just very thankful, and we look forward to try to get through all this together.
Coach Tamas, thank you. We'll go to questions now. Brian, looks like you're up first, and then Scott Beatty, you'll be after Brian.
Thanks, Danny. This is really for all three coaches. Wondering about your senior classes. You know, I'm sure that there are maybe some student athletes who are planning on, you know, graduating in December and, you know, possibly moving on to the next part of their lives, moving into their careers. Have you had any of those conversations with seniors, you know, about their plans, about possibly staying around for a spring season?
I mean, I can jump in here just with ours. You know, we've got meetings set up on Monday with our academic advisor and myself to kind of look at that. You know, most of our seniors, we're still planning on graduating in May, so it fits in their time frame. Hope Breslin was probably the one who was potentially considering trying to graduate in December and enter the draft. Don't know what that would look like, but really needs a season to put herself in a position for that. So you know, I think there's some conversations there relative to, you know, will the draft still be in January? What will the NWSL do? But for the most part, our seniors are on track to graduate in May, which is good for us.
We've begun to very loosely have those conversations. At this time for cross country, we don't really have the ability we don't have enough information to continue those. Moving cross country to the spring is not an option for us because of track. So there's some uniqueness around our sport that we're not really prepared. But I think a cool story that again comes back into the legacy of faith and belief and sacrifice we talk about. I have a walk-on senior athlete named Jack Lalonde who took last spring semester off to come back for this fall to compete in cross country one more time with his team. So, you know, it's heartbreaking. He lost his season. Most likely it wouldn't be very fiscally responsible of him. And ultimately we're mentors. And with each student athlete, I know all of our coaches are having conversations about what are their best options for their life, you know, and that's what the uniqueness of this is we all want to compete. We want to win. We want to be great. But at the end of the day, a lot of the conversations we had to have last spring, and I assume we'll have to have a lot this fall, revolved around people setting themselves up for their life and not just, you know, athletics. So that's what I know we're really focusing on. But I wanted to take a moment just to kind of highlight his sacrifice and kind of the pain there, but ultimately what it'll do for our team and the legacy of what this year means for us.
Yeah, we're in a similar boat as soccer where our seniors were planning on graduating in May as well. So at the moment we seem to be not as affected. And again, we'll just kind of continually hope for the fact that we have a chance to compete in the spring.
And just a quick follow-up for Sarah here. You know, with cross country, you know, maybe being a little different than the other sports we're discussing here, where, you know, it's an individual time for each of your athletes. Has there been any discussion about trying to have some kind of competition whether that's some sort of a time trial or something along those lines where the athletes would at least have the opportunity to have some form of competition this fall?
Discussions of, people on Twitter, I'm sure, at any type of concrete conversations. I allowed myself about 1 minute to mourn the loss of the season, and I immediately texted my assistant, our strength coach, and our athletic trainer about approaching this period of time a little bit different. And then very quickly after that, I was included in a group message among some of the other coaches in the about, how can we creatively approach this? And they've gone such a long time without competing, which is very rare for them. But I foresee some, maybe some inter squad type stuff. And Coach Fife and myself have discussed doing some inter squad of mixed relays with the men and the women. So we'll keep it interesting. We'll keep it fun, but nothing concrete at this time.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It looks like Scott Beatty, you were up next, and then Scott Ritchie, you were behind Scott Beatty.
Hey, thanks a lot. My question here directed for Janet and Sarah. I know you were looking forward, I'm sure, to opening up Demersion. My question is, how's that facility coming along? Do you have any plans for it now that at least competitions near it are on hold? Yeah, and just your feelings on having to open it up later than you wanted.
We're out there every day and see the construction, and I'm sure Sarah will be coming out there every day here shortly. And it's fun to watch, kind of watch it unfold as it's happening. And it was a little delayed anyway. We would probably have not been fully moved in until midway through the season. So, I told my team, if the spring season really materializes like we wanted to, it gives us an opportunity to really kick it off and have moved in there and really open the 2021 season in a fully functioning facility. So I think that's one of the opportunities that this has provided us. I'm set to take a tour in there sometime next week and see sort of exactly where we are, but you can see the structure come into place. And I think, we're looking for, a late October completion date. But now, certainly by the end of the year, and that means that we'll have a fully functioning facility if we can pull off a spring season. And so that's kind of exciting for us.
The Demersion Park has been paramount in keeping our kids connected to campus. Since March, once every couple weeks, I'd go for I'd go for a light jog. And I'd go by Demersion Park and just snap some pictures and send it to our team. And so that's just been, for all of the obvious reasons, we are so excited about that. But also during this time, Demersion Park has just served as a huge area of, while we kind of felt like we were put on, halt a little bit, we also were moving forward quite literally with this brand new facility. So I'd snap some pictures, send it their way. We also are getting a brand new, beautiful resurfacing of our indoor facility. So our track and cross country student athletes have a lot to look forward to when they come back. We also are looking forward to hosting the outdoor Big Ten championships this spring 2021. So it'll be awesome to highlight that and something certainly to look forward to.
And then one more, which I think would be relevant for Janet and Chris. One issue to navigate for football, at least if there is a spring season, is I guess would be workload management physically for the number of games in a period of time over a calendar year, whatever. Would there be any similar concerns for soccer or volleyball? I'm assuming not, but I wanted to get your opinion on that. If there'd be any issues to look at that in terms of just the physical nature of games in the spring and in the fall.
Chris, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I don't think there's concerns on our end about that. Normally we'd be having a spring season anyways that's similar to what we do in the fall, a little bit less amount of time, but I would see that assuming that the time would run relatively similar. Let's say we got to play between February and May or whatever that looks like, that time off between the summer and into next season, I think that's a good time to recover. The only time that it wouldn't go well is if we had a major injury, which we of course do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. But in terms of workload, we're used to practicing a couple hours a day. They do captain's practices in the summer on their own for about the same amount of time. So I would not be concerned if we had a roll from a spring to another fall within the same calendar year.
And I think, Scott, depending on, again, the length of that spring season, and, it is something that we've had a conversation about of, our season, even in the fall, is relatively dense if you're playing 2 games a week, and depending on how many weeks we have, I think it'll be, again, I think it's just something that we'll have to really address as we look at that. And it's not a concern. It's going to be really different if we roll straight from, a spring season, a little bit of a break in the summer, and then straight into a fall season. But, like Chris, we have several spring games, and then a lot of our athletes would go and play on a summer team all summer long and then jump into the fall. Many players have done that throughout their summer. And so, but there is a managing of training load during that time. A lot of our fall season is spent recovering from a game and preparing for a game. And so that would just be extended for a longer period of time. But I think it's something that we manage during the fall anyway. It would just be managing those same sort of parameters over an extended period of time with a little break in the middle. So definitely something I think that we could do.
Thanks, Janet. Scott Ritchie, you've got you up next in the queue for questions, and then Brett Behrens after that. And just a reminder, if you didn't yet, just drop a quick note in the chat if you do have questions, please.
I guess I'll start with Janet. You mentioned, having a spring season, of a sort already, every year. What about that could maybe help you, transition into maybe a full season in the spring? Just what do you feel like that would kind of look like?
Yeah, I think it's really, it allows us maybe to kind of flip our mindset. This fall is going to, feel a lot like a spring would feel, in that sort of like Sarah, we're looking at how can we do some inter-squad games during this fall to give us that competitive feel. And we do that a lot in the spring. We compete against ourselves. We do things, we're training, we're focused on different things. And then you roll into that, to get that competitive part. So, I think it's a matter of, we're going to do some of the similar things we've done just in different times of the year. And so it flips it a little bit, but it's not, it's not something that we haven't experienced relative to kind of focusing on different things. The fun thing about this is, normally in the spring, our seniors have completed their eligibility. So we're sort of doing that preparation phase without the entire squad. And now we have everybody, our incoming freshmen are here. We've got a full squad. I told the team the other day, it's a little bit like my national team experiences when you've got a year to prepare for a World Cup. And so you've got this year-long cycle where you're really trying to put your squad together. And that's kind of what it feels like. We've picked our roster, it's 2-year cycles. You pick your roster in that first year, you got your roster together, and you spend a year really kind of layering things in to prepare for that competitive season. And I think that's the mode we're going to be in right now. And that'll be very different for them. But something that I think I can take my experience from those national team environments and really apply it to the situation that we're in right now, which is kind of exciting for me.
It's a follow-up for you, Janet. I know with football, they kind of put a pause on their workouts. And where are you at? Are the team still together? Are you still practicing?
Yeah, the football team, I think, got here a little bit earlier than we did. So, we made the decision to keep our athletes here on campus. Them leaving and having to come back and go through the quarantine process, I think they were very happy just to stay. We certainly have what I would call backed off a little bit, because again, we're in a different place. We're not trying to get ready to play in 6 weeks. So it changes how often, how intense, what that looks like. But we're continuing to train. We're continuing to try to get better every day. And that's always been motto. When we talk about excellence, that's how we define it. The best you have on the day, trying to get better. And so, we're continuing to do that. We had a pretty light practice yesterday, and then we had some fun this morning before we really got after it and started competing. And we played some of the best soccer we've played since they showed back up on campus this morning. And it was really fun to watch because they enjoyed competing. I had a conversation with Vanessa DiBernardo, who just came out of the NWSL bubble, and talked about what a mental challenge that was. But they had a day in the middle of that they just found themselves laughing and goofing around, and said, we had to remind ourselves that we play this sport actually because we love it and we enjoy it. And I think that's what we have to focus on right now too, is they play this because they love it and they enjoy it. Not a whole lot of them are going to make it into a profession. So we have to give them that opportunity to play it and enjoy it. And in the process, get better every day.
Okay. And for Sarah, you mentioned cross country in the spring essentially being a non-starter because of track. I guess what you feel like is maybe something you can accomplish this fall from a development standpoint as you're preparing for indoor-outdoor track?
So distance athletes are always in season, cross country to indoor to outdoor. That brings that we start in August for cross, and then we compete through sometimes June and July for track. So we don't usually have this opportunity to have an off season. So like I said, I got right with messaging our athletic trainer, our strength coach, and my assistant about how to approach this a little bit differently, make sure we're still giving those competitive opportunities that they need. But for the most part, we're going to be able to use a fine-tooth comb with each of these individuals. So we're starting with an individual injury stratification tomorrow afternoon. And then from there, we're going to be able to really go through the athletes individual by individual and take a nice big long training block to address some of their individual concerns. So, it sounds weird to say, but one of the things I told the team is that we have this opportunity in front of us to improve without the distraction of competition, which, competing is what this is all about. But when you look at it that way, is, even Coach Rayfield said going, compete, recover. Our competition calendar is always crowded. So here we have a calendar that isn't crowded, and we can focus on their individual development and continue to just develop them as student athletes, as opposed to being distracted by how we're going to beat certain teams or a crowded competition calendar.
I guess, and lastly for Chris, you mentioned you had a good practice this morning. Was it different at all, getting in the gym, knowing that that practice wasn't going to be in advance of the season? Just kind of, what was the atmosphere like?
Similar to what Janet said, we're competitors. They like to compete. They like to have fun. I felt today more than any, it was like, let's go through a normal game warm up and let's compete against each other and play for some push-ups and sit-ups at the end of it. So we were able to do that, and the girls were getting feisty over calls. Maybe it was some bad calls made purposely by myself just so they get used to that. But no, I think that they really enjoy being in the gym, and when we got taken out in the spring, everyone went back home. It's maybe not as easy as some other sports to get good at on your own. You really need to see the game at the speed that we play at. With that being said, we've come back fantastically. I'm really pleased by some of the development that I've seen from some of our players. And I think a lot of that stems back to a lot of the work that we did off the court to make sure that they are good in these environments, good in terms of, the fear of the unknown. How can we make that into something that we can control? And the controllable is that we get to show up and choose how we attack the day and choose that we're able to react well to a sticky situation. And just pleased by all the responses that I've seen, and looking forward to continue to get after it as long as we're allowed to. And again, hopefully we have a season here in the spring, but we enjoy being in the gym. Everyone does. Just a great group to be around.
I guess just one follow-up for Chris, and I'll be done. You didn't have your spring, and maybe it would have been a crucial spring, just the number of changes, for this, what would have been this season. Is this extra development time a bonus? That do you view it that way for your team?
Absolutely. Yeah. Spring is usually the time where it is our development time. Much like Janet said, usually you're waiting for your freshmen to show up, and now the freshmen are here. So it's really, really nice to have that time frame to work with them and for them to understand the systems. And we can talk about it on film all we want, but it's a lot different when you're actually out on the court and playing next to your teammates. So I do appreciate that we'll have a little bit more time to develop, especially after losing 5 starters from last year's team, and that we get a better chance to gel, so to speak, and have that opportunity. And again, we're blessed that we have the chance to compete. And again, I thank Illinois for making it possible for us to do that.
All right. After Scott, it looks like Brett Behrens, you were up, and then Gavin Good, you're on deck.
Chris, love the sign behind you there, by the way. I think that's fantastic. My question's for Chris and Janet. I think it just applies a little bit more maybe in a team sport, although Sarah, I think it is applicable to you as well. What's the balance between, wanting to be positive with your athletes and yourself, and also the realism of this is not good. You know what I mean? Like you had all this anticipation of playing, and yet you're not going to be able to get that opportunity. So I'm curious how you balance that with your team of, hey, these are 18 to 22-year-olds and they have emotions just like everyone else. But, what's that balance and how do you strike that?
I think the balance is almost just telling it like it is. Again, we're kind of live in our athletics world can tend to be a bubble sometimes because we spend so much time with them, whether it be, your normal training block or, you're checking in with them throughout the year. Again, just kind of going over all the happenings since March or whenever this all started, just a reminder that this is something that we're going to do. It's important. It's important how you attack the skills that we're trying to teach you, but it's also important to have perspective. And we're talking about not being able to play our sport. There's people that lost their jobs. There's people that are going to feel a lot bigger pain from this. Heaven forbid someone gets sick, and so on and so forth. So we're very mindful that we're trying to do this through a pretty big pandemic, and we're going to do our best to do our part. But we want to make sure, hey, this is the reality that exists, and we're going to do our best to try to keep it, quote unquote, normal for them. And I think the challenges for their age is all they've known is the sport. A lot of them, all they known is that cycle of play, and just to try to get them to realize that, but say, hey, it's about being in the moment. And when it's time to step in the gym, it's time to step in the gym. And when it's time to go to class, it's time to go to class. And when there's time to think about other things, let's think about other things, and let's live in reality. Let's not try to pretend this isn't happening. Let's just kind of call it like it is and keep figuring out how to navigate the waters from there.
Yeah, I think Chris is right. And I think I said to my team the other day that everybody's emotions around this are going to be very different. And that right now, especially, is a kind of a no judgment zone with respect to emotions, because for some people, that could actually be a positive. If you're nursing an injury, you get to get all the way back healthy before the spring season. For someone who's looking at something a little bit differently. And so kind of a no judgment zone in terms of the emotions that you feel. Emotions are real, and I always say you can't control emotions, but you can control how you handle those emotions. And so I think that's what we're really trying to help them with, is how do you handle the disappointment? How do you handle anger? If that's, you're kind of going to go through all those emotions probably at different times, and those are real and those are justified. But can we, when we step out to play, do the thing that we love and let that be a time where we can be together and we can do this together? So I think it's trying to let them have the freedom to express those emotions in an appropriate way, and us help them handle them. And like Chris said, you call it, it's painful, and it's more painful for some than others. And I think they'll all deal with it in their own way. And we've got to be there to support them through that. But the sport is part of what supports them. Getting out and being able to play is, I told them that one of the reasons I decided to keep them here was because since March, the most joy I have felt was them being out on the field laughing and competing. And that, to me, we need to keep that going as much as we can for ourselves and for people in this community, to see that there is a time where that's going to come back and that we can all have that again. And so, we want to keep that, but understand that whether it's us or friends or family, that this pandemic is affecting a lot of people in ways that are even more difficult than we can even imagine. And we need to try to work ourselves through that.
Thanks. Just one quick question for Sarah. Did you see a way where cross country, could happen this fall, since it's no contact? And even for volleyball, Chris, were you guys disappointed in the fact that it was, all completely cut off, or did you see a way that you might be able to play?
I will precurse this, but that I'm not a medical professional, and that I trust the judgments that were made with the people that have the ability to make those judgments. Given what they were considering, anyone who's seen the finishing shoot of a cross country race, I think, would understand the implications for our sport. What exactly defines a contact? And again, I'm not equipped to answer those types of things, but I think there's a lot more sharing of fluids and contact than people really anticipate when you think about cross country. So there were some reports out of the SEC about starting a race with masks on and then taking them off when you're socially distant. Who's going to make that call? I don't know. So I'm going to trust the professionals. They'll trust me to coach cross country, and I'll trust them to make the calls for when it's safe.
Thanks.
Brett, just a comment on that. I think that I told my athletes this. We did such an amazing job here at Illinois that I think this decision felt very extreme because of how well our athletic department, our community, our public health, our medical staff, how well Illinois was able to bring our kids back, bring them safe, the testing we have, the protocols we have. We all felt really good about it, but we only saw it from our perspective here on this campus, where I think things were done amazingly well. And my hat is off to everybody, not just our athletic department, but Illinois Department of Public Health. It was so helpful. And so I think we all felt like it seemed extreme, but I think the reality is not everyone in our conference has been able to have the resources and the cooperation and the lab on campus that does saliva testing and all of those things that we've been able to put into place. And so for us, it did seem a little bit extreme, because I will tell you now, since March happened, the safest I have felt is in this environment where we're getting tested and you're with people that have been tested and that sort of thing. So I think that has kind of skewed our perspective on things just a little bit.
Brett, did you get everything that you needed there?
Yes, thank you guys. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
perfect. Gavin, you're up next, and then Alec, you're after Gavin.
Hey everybody, good to see you all. I've got a question for each coach, but I just want to start by asking all of you in general. Illinois obviously had a number of positive tests over the summer. And Janet, you just said, this is this campus and the protocols and everything have made you the safest you felt since March. Were you guys ever concerned about things and about those positive tests? I'm not sure whose programs had them, but just wondering in general, thoughts about that.
And again, I will say, because of the protocols that were in place there was no question about what are we going to do if. It wasn't oh shoot, we have one, now what? Everything was in place. What are we going to do with a positive test? What are we going to do with a contact tracing? What's defined as a contract? Where are we going to, I know that now know the difference between isolation and quarantine and all of those things, and how we were going to handle all of those situations to best protect all the student athletes and the staff. All of that was in place, Gavin. So again, I felt very confident. There was never an expectation that when we brought athletes back to campus that there would be no positives. That we were all told unrealistic expectation. So it wasn't a matter of oh gosh, what are we going to, I think all of that there was that expectation that would happen, and they were prepared to handle it.
Absolutely. The preparation was superb. I would just second everything Coach said. And then having just watched my team go through it on Monday, the organization, everyone would be extremely proud of the Illini student athletes and how they've behaved and how maturely and confidently they've navigated their expectations every day.
Any thoughts?
I was just going to say similar answer. I'll just give one more shout out because we're in the indoor space that, the people that work at Illinois as well, people clean huff, nonstop while before we get there, after we get there. So again, not just to the athletics department, but to the university as well. And I think there's something like 15 test sites out there. Again, you're never going to mitigate full risk, but I feel like Janet and Coach Sarah said that we're as safe as we could be, and we'll have protocols put in place for everything else. So just shout out to the university and the department.
Thanks. My next question is for Coach Haverman. Cross country, the women last year are coming off one of the best seasons in program history. The first time you guys made national since 2009. I would imagine, that success and the excitement you had for this fall season, and then to have it postponed and, in your situation to be basically, you don't have that similar hope of a full season in the spring. How frustrating is that? And how tough is that for you guys to handle?
That's a great question. We were certainly very eager to get back out there, and we returned everybody from last year. So I think just another year under their legs, and having that national experience now, and it would have been fun to watch. But we're going to keep our faith going again, that we expect setbacks, but we recognize this one isn't permanent. None of the student athletes that raced for us last year in the fall on that national qualifying team had redshirted yet. So if we focus on the positive, this is a good fall for them to, again, have that fine-tooth comb and get stronger, focus on some individual stuff with them. So we'll focus on what we can accomplish out of this, but we were certainly eager to get back out there, defend the regional title, and improve upon our national finish. We'll get that chance though.
Coach Rayfield, I'm guessing, you've probably had some experience in your career of playing soccer in cold weather, but how strange would it be to be playing a bunch of games, at a new Demirjian Park, but if it's snowing or, when it's really cold, and how does that change things for you guys?
Yeah, again, I think it's similar experiences, but maybe flipped a little bit. So we'll start in the cold and end in the warm instead of starting in the warm and ending in the cold. There have been some NCAA playoff games where, Cal has had to fly out to UMass and play in the snow, or, I remember a men's NCAA Final Four that was held at SLU that they had to postpone because of the snow. So, and to be honest, I think I'd rather have those early games in the snow and have really good weather for an NCAA championship, and we'll look at the positives of that. Fortunately for us, it is a sport that can be played in some, different weather conditions. It's not like, softball where they say, hey, if it gets below this temperature, we're not going to play. So, we've got the ability. I think that's what gives us an opportunity to have a spring season, is that we can play in some pretty adverse weather if we have to. And then we can end our season with some pretty good weather on the back end. So again, we'll just kind of focus on the positives of that.
Thank you. And then for Chris, obviously, like the other programs, you've got more time for development now and stuff. I'm just wondering, what can you do in this time? As an indoor sport, it might be a little tougher for you guys to train. I'm not sure, how all that's going to go. But how can you guys improve during this time before the theoretical spring competition?
Again, I'll just go back to my answer about the spring and kind of it being taken away. I think it's difficult to do that just because you're going to have a tough time finding maybe a brother or sister that can hit the ball at you the same way as maybe a coach could, or being able to play 6-on-6 at the speed and at the height that we usually see. And so a lot of it, this is going to be a combination of both. We're going to do some skill work, and a portion of practice is chunked for skill development, and then we're going to have maybe the last half of practice, or maybe we'll have certain days where we'll just compete and get after it, and be able to learn through competition and how to read certain situations and talk about team aspects of the game. So I think that's going to be the approach. It would be the same if it was in the spring. Again, we're just glad to be back in the gym with them and have contact with them and see everyone smile. Not all wear a mask, but see the smile through the eyes, as they say. So, but we're having a good time with them.
Absolutely. Sorry, I've got so many questions. The last one, I swear. This one's for anyone. There's kind of a lot of speculation going on right now about men's basketball and the possibility of, setting up something close to a bubble, or, the closest thing that the NCAA and colleges can do to that. I'm just wondering what you guys see happening with your sports and possibilities, that could be like that, as well as, how not being a super bubble like the NBA or MLS or whatever, but being something, pretty tight, and, talking to players about limiting their contacts and exposure to people. What's all that been like, and what are your thoughts?
I guess I'll start on this one. First of all, Kofi Deo coming back, so better get that bubble going. But I think in some ways we already live in bubbles when we play. We operate. We go to Huff. We go to class. This year's going to be different with class. They go back to their apartments, and it's repeat. And I know one of the concerns was what happens when all the students come back here in about a week or so, and I guess we'll find out, and we'll see how well behaved that people can be. And I know, humans are social, and especially in college age, they like to socialize. But we've been over and over with them, like, hey, this is our opportunity to show that we can do this and have the opportunity for a winter or spring or whatever that looks like. And so it's just more of a test to see what the discipline can end up being. And I feel, again, comfortable in the testing capacity and organization that we have from the medical side of this, and we hope that continues as students return next week.
I just want to comment on that. In the Tamas household, I know your kids see game speed balls. So that's not an issue for you guys. I know you're hammering them. I have been trying to reiterate to our kids their ownership in this. Our medical staff and the conference level have worked so tirelessly to try to make this work. And it's the ball's kind of in their court now. So they need to make sure that they're living disciplined, they're controlling this to the best of their abilities with their decisions. And then I would just urge the entire campus community, if you want to see sports in the spring make a return and you want to see winter sports happen, there's ownership for you here as well. And if we make good choices, and I'm not trying to take anything away from your college experience, but this is only going to go longer and longer if we don't make good decisions and live with discipline and make choices that are better for our community. And I believe in the University of Illinois, and I think we're capable of doing that.
I think Sarah hit it right on the head that we talked all the time about athletes as being role models, whether they want to be or not. And I think we have a chance right now to show the Champaign-Urbana community, to show the other students, and really to say, this is a sacrifice that we're making for the betterment of the community at large. This isn't just about maybe an athlete was going to get sick. This was about, this virus has to get under control in order for us to get back to normal, and for us, normal is sports. But I think it's the student athletes have an opportunity to say, yep, we're going to do the things that we need to do to help our community get back to normal, which would include us being able to play sports. And I think it's a a privilege to be an athlete, and it's a privilege to be a role model. And now we want to take that, and with privilege comes responsibility. And now it's they need to take on that responsibility to do the right things. And by doing the right things, hopefully that means we get a spring season. And, I think that's the way we're trying to approach that.
Thanks.
All right, looks like great minds think alike. So Alex's question was covered by Gavin. So we're going to jump ahead to Matt Stevens, and then Patricia, you'll be up next after Matt.
Thanks for doing this. I have two questions. One specifically is for Chris, so I'll start with this one. Is that you've mentioned before, obviously, that you're one of the few, if the only, indoor fall sport that starts out. So I'm curious, and I apologize if this is a dumb question, but was there ever a consideration among you and your colleagues, whether it was in the Big Ten or out west, that was there an outdoor element possible for your sport, whether it's practice, whether it's in competition for games? Was that ever talked about?
Not on a large scale. I know there's some teams that have started, has set up some outdoor courts on their tennis courts, or some of them have a specific material called sport court where you can just kind of lay anywhere. But I think the overall logistics of that happening, it's a possibility, but the reality of it happening would be difficult to figure out the space and the elements, and you have to wait till the sun goes down. If so, where the lights set up. So I think it definitely was an idea, but it was never one that was considered. And I think that's for the betterment. That's also for the safety, just even for the, like I mentioned, just whether or not the sun goes down, it could be a big deal. If you got light shining in your eyes and from the sun, and you got a 70-mile-per-hour shot coming at your face, that might be tough to defend. So we did talk about it, but a lot of it was just in jest, and we know that we're an indoor sport, and we're going to have to be able to do that once it's safe to do so.
And I know that, to follow up with that, I figured the answer was no, but you guys are kind of the test baby right now for what people are going to want to see for basketball and other winter sports that are going to be indoors. So Chris, what was your level of confidence that you could pull this off if given the okay by the league and by the governing bodies?
Yeah, I was confident, just as the other coaches have mentioned. We've all mentioned through the call, in terms of our protocols. We've been outstanding in terms of testing and making sure that if there is a test or a positive test, that there's reacted to properly. I think, again, the concern comes if you're playing in a space, and let's say someone did pick up a positive test, would everyone that's inside the building have to end up quarantining? And I believe that was the case, or at least that was the information at the time. And so I know that didn't lend itself to the decision that we wanted, but okay, here we are. And I do believe that we'll get some answers as we go through practice, and other teams go through practice as well. So again, it just goes back to discipline, not only of our team, but everyone else around us. And if we want to see Illinois indoor sports, this coming year, then, I recommend that we all take this seriously.
And my final question is essentially for all three, but specifically for Janet and Sarah, because I know that you're going to have events coming up that you could possibly have fans at. And I was wondering if that's potentially the silver lining in all this, is that by having this bump all the way to the spring, is there optimism and encouragement that you might not be playing in front of no fans at this point, which was on the table if you guys had started in the fall?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's, one of the other possibilities that is a positive, in that, if we can get the spread of this under control and things move in a positive direction, Diversion Park is open, and, whether it's a full stadium or whether we have to keep people spread out, we've got the ability to give them assigned seats and to do things the right way based on whatever is allowable at that point in time. And so, yes, Matt, I think that, thinking about what it could look like in the spring with fans in the stands is certainly something that makes me smile, thinking about what could happen.
Yeah, following all protocols that would need to, we would certainly look forward to having people in the stands for our outdoor Big Ten meet. That would be certainly something to look forward to.
Thanks. That's all I had.
All right, Patricia, you're up next, and you're the last person in the queue. Unless anybody has any follow-ups, just go ahead and shoot a quick message in there. But we only have about 10 minutes left or so.
Okay, this question is for Chris and Janet. If any other conferences do play in the fall, I'm just wondering how you square that in your mind on a national level. How do you view that in the larger picture of how this season would kind of play out and be viewed nationally when two major conferences like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 aren't playing in the fall, and maybe how that would then seep into a spring season and how all that would then figure on the national level?
I think a lot of it goes to your governing body and how they view it. And, even though they're saying there might be some conferences that end up going, we're still unified as a volleyball, at least at this time, we're still unified as a volleyball front in terms of we like to be playing for something. We like to be playing for a championship, not just, conference champion or whatever that may look like. One of the things that we said from the outset of this, and it's just maybe the uniqueness of the United States and how it's 50 states, they get to make up their own rules and all of this. And, not having necessarily, fairness in the recruiting aspect or, who's allowed to do what and when. We knew that was going to come up to play, and you're seeing it play out right now. If someone does go out and play, again, that's up to their discretion and the people that they're listening to. We listen to our people, and I'm okay with that. I respect that, and we'll kind of see how it turns out. And that's part of living in the United States, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think when the very first team or conference said we're pulling out for the fall, then a fall champion was always going to have an asterisk by it. There's going to be a lot of asterisks for anything that happens in 2020 or 2021. And so you may have a fall NCAA champion or champion and a spring one in this particular year. But I think the most important thing is that the athletes have a chance to compete for a championship. And I do think, Patricia, if there's 2 Power 5 conferences or 3 in the fall, and if those Power 5 and the schools get split, I do think that a Big Ten championship all of a sudden carries a little bit more weight and importance. But I think doing that and then still being able to say, you know what, we were the best of the teams that played in the spring of 2021. That's still an accomplishment, and there's a lot of teams that'll be playing, and that won't be an easy task for anyone to accomplish. And so although it may have an asterisk by it, it will still be something that our athletes will want to compete for, will train hard to compete for, and will be very proud if that's, even though it might have an asterisk by it.
I was going to ask you guys if you had talked to your athletes about that, about could they feel satisfied if there was this asterisk, or if they were competing only for a conference championship. Would that be still appealing to them, or would they be kind of disappointed in that?
Patricia, from our standpoint, we've talked a lot about what does a meaningful season look like, and what would be meaningful for them. And I think, Josh Whitman said when he talked to them the first night, we certainly want to look at the possibility of a spring season, but we will only do that if that season is going to be meaningful. And, I think asking them what meaningful means, certainly competing for a conference championship and being able to compete nationally, I think is something that's important to meeting that definition of meaningful.
Chris, especially with volleyball, like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are such huge powerhouses. How can you really have a national champ with those 2 conferences missing?
They can't. That's it. No. No, I say that in jest, obviously. I think, again, that's where we're just relying on the fact that we'll end up being unified in this. I think again, what is meaningful? What does that look like? I think we'll come to some decision amongst that. And if schools, say that, hey, they wanted to compete, that's what they're saying they can. But then you get the asterisks out there, and hopefully we'll still be able to do something in the spring. So again, it's a bit of the Wild West right now. But we know that we have, like you said, I think normally we've had, if you get to a Sweet 16, I think 10 to 12 of those are from the Big Ten or from the Pac-12. And so, I think we do hold a lot of weight, and hopefully that carries through the day in terms of kind of giving the importance of maybe a potential championship that if someone does determine to play, they would. But if we don't play, then hopefully we can get one going in the spring.
Thank you both.
Okay, unless anybody has any follow-ups, I think that was our last person in the queue. Everybody good? Perfect. Seems like we're all set. Coach Rayfield, Coach Haverman, Coach Tamas, thank you for joining us, and thanks everyone for jumping on the call today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.